Okay, so let's go to what basically ethical hackers do in their career. Ethical hackers perform imitations of real-world attacks, but of course no one is interested in just getting the idea whether they can be hacked or not, right? So the binary answer of yeah, we have broken in, or we haven't broken in because I don't know, we had less money than expected for that, or we had less time than is required for that. Okay, that is not very interesting to the clients. So the work of ethical hackers is much more methodical than the black hats. Okay, so black hats just strike into vulnerabilities they know exist, and they just find them in the targets, and this is how they choose targets. Okay, basically they just know that something is wrong with the WordPress right now, and they target WordPress based websites. What ethical hackers do, they choose their targets based on their client relationships. Okay, so they find a sales opportunity, they pitch the idea of being hacked before bad guys cause you harm, and then they just perform a penetration test or security audit or security assessment. And they do that according to a certain methodology, because being methodical is very important in two aspects. First of all, everything you do should be repeatable. Okay, so the clients should have at least a theoretical ability to reproduce your actions. Okay, and they have to do that according to some methodology, because otherwise, if there is no methodology to follow, they will just rely on your word, and this is not very professional. And there are other implications of that. And the second thing is that there is different level of technical skill and experience in the industry. So using methodology basically lets us transfer a lot of work downstream in this skill tree, okay, from more experienced guys to less experienced guys, in order to uh, uh, give them incentive to do more different job, to do more difficult job, and in this way progress and get experience and become those more experienced guys. So methodology is how we formulate what we know, what we can do, to the people who are just very new to that and are in the beginning or halfway to us in this role. What is the difference between security audit, security assessment, and penetration test? These are just different things we can do about a system in order to assess its security level. Okay, but that's very important to understand that security audit, just based on the definition of a word audit, is not a pen test or assessment. It's a very specific thing that is related to the previous history. So every time we use this word audit, we mean that we review previous history. We review some period of time and we make conclusions, not just assumptions. We make specific conclusions that are proven by the evidence that we collect that something was going on for a period of time. For example, we have a control. Authentication control, access control, right? And we review the access logs and we conclude that this control was active continuously during last year and was effective, and no one was going in other than using this access control mechanism. Yeah. What is security assessment? That's a different thing, simpler one actually. That's just understanding what's going on right now, so taking a snapshot in time and assessing the posture of a system. Yeah, so in this way, for example, auditing is different from PCI DSS like security assessment. Yeah, so QSAs are called that for a reason. They are not auditors, they are qualified security assessors who are going in and seeing things and making conclusions about what's going on right now. They are not very much interested in what was going on before they came in, right? They are interested in what's going on right now, and for that, just for example, as part of the job, they verify whether penetration tests took place regularly. Okay, so they want to know whether right now there is a progress on a previously issued penetration test report. So you just have to show it to them, and they just see what's the results. But they are not interested in whether everything is fixed. You have to be it has to be a work in progress right now. Okay, so what is penetration test? It's a test, first of all. So it's something very interactive. We are issuing signals and seeing how systems or people are reacting to them. Okay, so that's very much as testing anything, just producing some impulses and assessing and observing the results. So we are interacting with an object, with the target, in order to understand how it reacts to different types of attacks. We generate these attacks and we understand how system reacts to it. So if the reaction is appropriate, we conclude that the security posture is okay. If the reaction is not appropriate, is lower than expected, we conclude that there is a security issue, we dig deeper, we understand what's the vulnerability, and create a recommendation on how to remove it or how to make things more secure after we go away. So penetration test is interactively testing the system in terms of resilience and resistance to security threats / attacks. Okay. What is assessment scope? This is something very general, and it relates to any type of security assessment, right? Including penetration tests and security audits. This is some boundaries in time-space that define what is going to be assessed. So, for example, it's an area or it's a name of a company, mentioning that any IT asset of this company is within the scope, or it's just a wildcarded DNS name, okay, or a explicit list of IP addresses or URLs or API calls, whatever. So it can be very different. It can be broad, it can be narrow. The broader it is, the more high quality results ethical hackers can produce when they assess that scope. However, large scopes are very questionable. You know, so you have to assess the scope in terms of the methodology you use, but the large scopes and the methodology of chosen methodology of a white box explicit testing of everything provided in the scope statement can be very time consuming. Okay, so you have to balance that when you negotiate the scope with the customer, and the client should understand that only the things in the scope will be tested, and that narrowing down the scope to a few very secure targets will not give them understanding about what their general security posture is. This is the very tricky topic, I guess. We'll discuss it further. And what's the matter of the chosen methodology? Okay, so as this manner of coloring of painting hats in different colors shows you, security professionals like to paint, and different methodologies normally fall down into one of three categories. That's either black box testing or white box testing, or something in between called gray box testing. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of coloring these boxes, but still we have to use some terminology, and however we cannot be sure, and we cannot guarantee that there is something on these edges, right? That there is a completely black box or completely white box, because there are always these gray areas. So anything we do is gray box naturally, but it's biased to either black edge or white edge of this security methodology scale. So what does it mean? Black box means, first of all, what we have zero knowledge about the scope when we start the assessment. This does not mean that we physically, right, have zero knowledge about that, but this implies that we will use a methodology with this premise, right, with this perception of zero knowledge about the scope. We will act such as in a manner that implies that we don't have any knowledge. So we will have to go through all the reconnaissance stages, starting from zero knowledge, and show that, yeah, the data that we are using further in the assessment was obtained from the zero level, from the zero knowledge about the scope. This is very important in order to show the business risk, because if we just know something, we have to show that other people, that black hat hackers, can know that as well after some time googling or doing other type of open source intelligence. Okay. White box, on the other hand, is completely different thing. It means that we do not spend time on reconnaissance at all. We have unlimited knowledge about the scope from the very beginning. This normally implies the our ability to interact with any personnel involved in security operations. Yeah, so any developer, any DevOps engineer, anyone who can be reached and asked about different things about the scope will be reached and asked. Okay, so this is another extreme point. This is not possible normally, because for example, when we have white box testing, we mean that we can access the source code of any application. That is not normally possible due to some software products are off the shelf ones, and the source code is not readily available. So yeah, we fall somewhere in between. We have some sort of a black box when we just explicitly define the scope, and we don't have any information about what's the operating system that's running on this specific host by this IP address. But we know the IP address or domain name. Okay, or we have a domain and we have to dig into it and retrieve all the hosts that belong to this domain and all the networks that they are in, and then we can scan these networks to identify additional hosts and verify whether they belong to the same company and so on. So yeah, this is quite tricky, but just to sum it up, we have different type of assessments, and we have different type of methodologies that can differ from black box through gray box to white box.